Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Cheryl Carr, your work doctor, and this is the Achieve with Dr. C broadcast. How are you doing so far on this wonderful Monday morning? I'm so happy to be here today, and I'm just loving this weather, other than last night. It was a little interesting. Last night, we got thunderstorms and tornado warnings, and the temperature dropped, and then all hell busted loose, it seemed like. And I could see the lightning in the distance, and you know, even though I don't have my dog with me anymore, I'm still a chicken little. Neither one of us like storms. So for that storm to blow in like that, it was like not fun, but made it through, actually slept through most of it. So that's a good thing. Make sure if you're not following me on Facebook and you're watching this rebroadcast, make sure you follow me on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click like, share, and subscribe to my channel. The channel is growing. There's lots of exciting Achieve with Dr. C things going on, especially wrapping up the year. I'll be introducing my end of the year challenge for the year, which I've got a direction I'm going. I'm still praying, fasting, and asking God to show me exactly what He wants me to do for this time period to wrap up 2021, which I've been saying 2020 was ugly. 2021 was its ugly stepbrother. It was like just not, the year just wasn't my friend to begin with. That's because I think I've said repeatedly I had COVID and I was very, very ill, deathly ill. And it just wasn't fun. The start of the year wasn't fun. Um, just just a lot happened. But I'm a firm believer in once you survive something, to grow, you need to make sure you don't park in the incident that happened to you. So I've been working to grow past it, learning so much about not just COVID, but recovery, because so many people have had COVID and there's so little being done with treatment. There's so little being done with recovery. And when I say so little being done, other than, traditional modalities of treatment, and they're not necessarily leaving people restored to health. So, with that said, let's dive into today. This month I've been dealing with presumptions and assumptions. And basically, this came to me after wrapping up the month of dealing with our mindsets that I did last month. The whole month of September was dealing with mindsets. Well, then I progressed to dealing with a post-traumatic growth. I started doing some corporate trainings with VUCA, which is volatile, unstable, chaotic, and ambiguous. And that's the work world and the world we're all living in right now. That's it. It's VUCA. So in dealing with that, it amazed me the perceptions and assumptions people brought to bear on COVID, on the state of our country, on everything. I mean, just everything. It was so much presumption and assumptions that I felt like it would be a good idea to introduce the subject of presumption and assumption. And last week I talked a lot about presumption, which presumption is it's an assumption of belief or certainty of belief that you acquire information about so that you can make a qualified, quantified decision about, is that true? Is that true for me? Do I have enough information to walk in the presumption that this should be included in my certainty of belief. Certainty of belief is where your mindset springs from. What you believe, what you see to be true, how you face the world, how you talk to yourself, how you talk to others, all stems from your presumptions about what you believe, what your values are, your core values, and those are adaptable as far as where you're living and the society you're living in, because our boundaries keep moving with our values. What we used to value isn't very valuable right now. But there's still some consistencies. But anyway, that's presumption. Assumptions, which I'm going to be dealing with, is something or information that you accept as true without a shred of proof. And if you have that proof, it's incomplete. So you fill in the blanks or interpolation, you interpret what is a certainty of belief for yourself, completely independent of any contributor or contribution of information from any other sources other than what you want to believe. And that's why my talk today is called The Awfulness of Assumptions. Assumptions, as my dad used to say, make an ass out of you and me. Because again, assumptions are incomplete information. If you don't have a certainty of belief based on facts, but your certainty of belief is based on what you see, hear, and believe to be true completely. I mean, you don't confuse yourself with facts. You don't want to hear it. You don't want anybody to talk to you about anything else other than what you want to see, hear, and believe. And as you can imagine, you can't connect the dots of the information to make sure it's valid and truth if you're only getting it from one source. If you're only listening to one thing, that's going to create that certainty of belief that I keep mentioning that stems from, it forms your mindset. And until and unless you decide to be rational, because you get into irrational behaviors, thinking, and actions when you only believe what you want to believe. If you only see what you exactly want to see, and if you only hear exactly what you want to hear. Now, we're very guilty of doing this when we find religion, when we find God. And that is where assumptions become dangerous, because we become radical in making our God the only God, and our interpretation or assumption of facts and certainty of belief in that particular way of worshiping, seeing God, that's it. That's all you look at. That's all you listen to. So your whole life becomes very radical. And I submit to you, I've been there. I've been brainwashed into thinking the God I now believe in, which I'm a Christian. I don't even like using that word. I'm a believer. And as a believer, I believe in Jesus Christ. And I've accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. So in doing that, I used to only listen to preachers, teachers, leaders, books, anything that is exactly the way I saw God. Anything any different, I just poo-pooed it and pushed it away because I was living in assumption. I was living in an assumption as if God himself was not capable of making sure I could assume and have certainty of belief with relevant facts, information, and experiences, and acquiring knowledge and information to connect the dots about him so that I don't form my own shape of what I believe to be true. And when I did that, my life and my relationship with God became so much richer. My life and my relationships with others became so much richer. Because remember last week when I was talking about presumptions, I said it's really important to know they're not you. People are not you. Everybody doesn't think the same. And when you have everybody thinking the same, like with one brain, one train of thought, that's not even good teamwork because you miss out on what someone else can bring to bear if all you want and all the way you see the world and the only way you want information is exactly how you want to see, hear, and believe. And being assumptive, being someone who only wants to hear, see, and believe what they want, you are fragile. It's a very fragile place to live. You're fragile emotionally. That's why we see a lot of the behaviors we see in society right now, people just going off because what they want to be true doesn't have the sustainable facts, information, and it's just not true. So they have to fight that because it activates when you are in an assumption or you're not rational, where you're incorrect in your thinking, you haven't bothered to acquire information to confront what you were believing so you can look at the whole picture and then make a decision. Your emotions come into play and you become completely irrational, and you have a lot of sensitive buttons that can be pushed anytime somebody confronts what you're assuming to be true, and you become activated and you're painful, you're fragile, you're emotionally fragile. And people that live with assumptions, it's like Groundhog Day for them because their whole way of existing is to reinforce the assumption without any facts, information, or acquiring any counterpoint. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They have had their certainty of belief based on their assumption, which remember what I said assumptions are. It's accepting something as true without any shred of proof. It's like you just make up your own mind without anything added to it to get you to where you can make up your mind, except for what reinforces what you want to believe, what you think is true, and the way you think everybody else should be thinking. It's a very fragile, painful way to live. Very fragile and painful. And actually, people that are assumptive have overactive nervous systems. They have a lot of cortisol, they have a lot of stress. It's a very stressful way to live, to only live in assumptions. Now, we make assumptions at the beginning of believing anything because you have your experiences, you have your facts, you have your education, you have your books you've read, your TV shows you've seen, your family members who believe this way. That's usually how we come to religion. We come to religion with a full breadth of experiences with people that have shaped our assumptions. But once you become an adult, it's a good idea to confront your assumptions with relevant information and facts so that you can get a certainty of belief around what you think you believe. So it's easy to have assumptions because all you need is incomplete information about a situation, person, or occurrence, circumstance. And then you mix with that incomplete information an unwillingness. You have to be unwilling to ask questions so that you can complete the information. It's like you pick a spot and you're going to sit there in that spot with all that you want to have, see, believe, and nothing will move you from it. You're not even going, you're unwilling to ask any questions, to let anybody bring you any information once you've gotten into assumption, and that's it. And that's how we're living as a society right now. And it's dangerous. And I see people really, we call it triggered, which I've tried to get people to stop saying everything is a trigger, because that's really, it's a psychological term that really has a lot behind it. Most people aren't necessarily triggered as much as they're having an uncomfortable emotional experience. And in that uncomfortable emotional experience, they are repeating their pain. It's like they're punching themselves when they're assumptive because they refuse to connect the dots. They refuse to acquire new, different information to confront what they see and then sit and think about that for themselves. It's like, nope, this is what I believe. This is what they told me to believe. This is what is true. And nothing you say will make me not believe it's true. That's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. I personally have learned, especially in the last 10, 15 years of my life, to never let myself stay in assumptions. Yeah, we come to everything initially with presumption and assumption, or now mindset. Now, presumptions have some foundation of truth and belief, and you maybe experienced it. Like that's the way we worship. That's when we come together as a body of believers around a certain way of teaching, preaching, singing, worship. All of that is because we've had a presumption of, I can trust this. This is where I belong. This is where I'm hearing things that I can question, use my righteous mind, think for myself. Nobody's trying to tell me how to believe, think, act, be. I can be an individual with a free will. And that's what presumption is, because you're always trying to acquire information to get you to certainty of belief. Now, don't confuse certainty of belief and assumptions together. Because remember, I said a presumption, you're acquiring, you're willing to get the information to connect all the dots so you can arrive at a certainty or a certain way of thinking and believing. Now, when you're assumptive, that means you have nothing to base it on. You just interpreted or interpolation all the facts for yourself. You interpret the information as being true and valid, and you just refuse to have anything else. So, how can you get to life beyond assumptions? Ask questions. I live my life as if one of my core beliefs is dead wrong. And I live my life like that so that one, I remain humble, and two, I stay away. I avoid assumption like a plague. And then I have a willingness to hear the truth, even if it's painful, even if I don't like it. And it's assumptions is a default behavior, you guys. We can get there, and that's why I keep saying why it's so hard to it's so hard to deal with society right now, because there's a segment of our society living fully in assumption, and no amount of facts, information, it's like they poo-poo it all. Like nothing that's been true and valid and able to be counted on for eons and eons. It's like now we have the real truth. Now we know the real truth. So now all these things, they're fake. And anytime you have someone doing that, pushing you to assumption to where you can't question, you just accept and acquire a certainty of belief around what they're telling you, you're in dangerous territory. So, the biggest way I always want to share information is to ask you to ask questions. Question things that you see, that you're being told, that before you assume it's true. Use your mind. You have a wonderful brain. As long as you're awake, thinking, and thank you, sis. Yes, this is kind of hard, sis, because people don't want their confrontation with their assumptions, because they're comfortable, and you're very fragile when you're being assumptive. So to avoid assumption, I always like to tell you um, how to not only hear information, but to think about it, and then what you can do to to create action around a new belief or a new way of seeing things. And I'm never trying to tell you exactly what to believe. I'm giving you information to think about. So, first of all, to avoid becoming assumptive in your life, ask questions. And anytime you find yourself being irrational, emotional, and unwilling to listen to someone else's perspective, because remember, everybody's not you. We don't all think alike. And anytime you shut doors to the multicolored, diverse way of thinking, you're not even using your brain to full capacity, because your brain is able to keep you on a path of belief, to certainty of belief, if you learn to use it, to think, to ponder, to meditate on something. Don't shut your brain off, and then what you heard, now it's true to you, because you're not going to confront it, ask questions. You're unwilling. So you've gotten over into assumptions. And I truthfully believe if you start asking questions about things when you see it, ask questions about, what is that? What are they trying to get me to believe? What are they wanting me to believe is true? And why? So that's a good way to confront assumptions, and to nip it in the bud when it starts, and to get out of the habit of being an assuming thinker, one who only assumes, and you stay in there. You're right. Mature people think. Mature people, that's so true. That's what I'm talking about when it comes to assumptions. So many adults or it's like they're afraid to think for themselves, that they'll be kicked out of the group just for questioning. Or and anytime that happens, then you know you're in a problem, that they don't want you to think. They don't want you to think. But you're so right, Latasha. You're so true. So let's talk about why you should avoid assumptions like the plague. And then I'm going to give you your homework assignment and get out of your hair. Yeah, that part. Yes, it is. Here's how you can avoid assumptions like the plague. Number one, no, this is why you should avoid assumptions like the plague. And it's going to give you more information about what being an assumptive person, what this looks like. So you can decide for yourself, which will be your homework assignment. I'll just give it to you. Is I want you to start questioning, to be willing, first of all, to question what you believe to be true. What are you assuming is true? And what valid information do you have that it is? So here's why you should avoid assumptions like the plague. Number one, they're an easy out. This is a lazy way of thinking. Being assumptive means you're on a path of don't nobody bring me no bad news. Nobody tell me anything different than what I want to see, how I want the world to be, how I think. Second thing, you can get out of being responsible for your life when you're an assumptive person. Now, mothers, a lot of boys have very assumptive thinking. They don't mature as fast as girls do, and boys tend to be very linear, straight line thinkers. And that's a perfect breeding ground for being presumptive. So if you're dealing with a son who has issues around, they only want to play video games, or they only want to do this, they only want to stay in bed, they don't want to go to school, you've got to confront their assumptions. This is the most gentle way of mothering, and it's the best way for fathers to help a boy become a man, is to deal with his assumptive thinking. It's a lazy way of thinking. And I'll let you know, I can have one conversation with a boy, and I can tell you from his conversation where he's being assumptive in his thinking, and that he needs confrontation of truth. He needs more information, and he needs to be taught by another man. A mother can't teach her son how to be a man. A man needs to teach him how to deal with his linear thinking, which can be lazy. That's why I say sometimes I deal with guys, I tell them, you're very one note. It's like you don't open your mind up to the beauty of one. It's not going to make you emotional to think. And some guys, like older guys that are real immature in their thinking, they think they have this macho attitude of, I don't have to do all that because that's going to make me like a girl or a woman. I don't have to do all that thinking. But this keeps you from taking responsibility for your life. And this is why, like, boys won't get up and go out and work. You'll see 20-year-old boys that are living like they did when they were 15, 16, when they were allowed to eat Cheerios and play video games all day. Or why, when it comes time to be responsible and get out the door and work and become a man and take care of the world, their family and their life. Yes. This is something, I hope this tip will help some of you with your sons. They're just not taking responsibility for their lives because they are lazy in their thinking. They're very one note and they're very, very assumptive. Like, and if you start talking to them, they're going to tell you some of their assumptions, and some of them are so irrational. It's like, you know, and men and egos. This is when we say men have fragile egos. It's not really a fragile ego, it's just their way of thinking. They've never been taught how to mature and not be assumptive and one note in their thinking. So anyway, when your assumption, this is why you should avoid assumptive thinking like the plague, and help your sons and your daughters avoid assumptive thinking like the plague. Because one, it's a very lazy way of thinking. It doesn't require anything of you. You can't grow from there. You stay stuck. Then you've got not taking responsibility for your life. You can check out. You don't have to be responsible, and you live behind the version of your story, of the way you want life to be. And Black people, we continue to stay stuck on the slavery story and the poor relationships between Black women and Black men story. We stay hidden behind that. I'm so tired of these conversations because they're lazy thinking. And we're not taking responsibility for the fact that we've got to move beyond all of this stuff. We can't stay here. But let me get off that soapbox, because that's the third thing why you should avoid assumptive thinking, is because it'll keep you stuck in the past. You'll stay stuck in the past. You rely on old information, repetitive information. It's like Groundhog Day for you, because you don't want to be confused or confronted with new and different information. So you stay stuck in the past, in a time period, in a certain way things happen. Um, Sometimes it can become a very victimized way of thinking, but when you're an assumptive person, you stay stuck in the past. You don't move forward. Second, fourth thing, it's a lazy behavior. It's a lazy behavior to, instead of asking questions, you jump to conclusions. And then you want to stay there because you're not going to listen. You're unwilling to get any new information. So there you are, full assumptions. Assumptions also foster a negative mindset. And that's what I was just saying. I feel like we have allowed the awfulness of slavery and the awfulness of Jim Crow and the fierceness of the fight against discrimination to make us, as people of color, very assumptive in our thinking. We instantly assume someone is against us, and we instantly assume it's a person and not the system of slavery that we have to fight. I know plenty of good non Black people, and I'm saying that because there's so many different nationalities, races, and creeds that have been a blessing to me, that have helped me. And some of my greatest pains have come from my assumptive thinking people of color. And it's very lazy behavior. We have to move beyond these things. And I'm ready for it. I don't want to jump to conclusions. I want to have conversations that we each listen and think and learn. That's why I like the men in my life. One, I don't go to women about men. I go to a man to find out what's going on here. What am I looking at? And get that information from another man. And I have the best conversations with guys that I date. Um, the men that I've had in my life, I ask questions. I ask a lot of questions. I think it can be a little annoying sometimes, but I really want to know how they see the world, what they're thinking. And it helps me not to think about men the way I want to, but to think about a man exactly who he is or what he's telling me men are like. My poor brother that lived with me, I asked him a lot of questions about guys, and he would tell me things, and I really listened to him. Thank you, sis. Thank you. I'm serious. If I watch one more show about what's wrong with black women or what's wrong with black men, uh, come on, can we have a different conversation? Such lazy thinking. I don't even listen anymore. Every now and again, for amusement, there was a certain talk show host that's very popular. I ain't giving him no juice. I'm not mentioning his name on my broadcast, but he's very popular with black men right now, like millions of followers, and they're all giving him money and making him extremely popular. And I liked him better when he first started out because people refused to see that he was holding both sexes accountable. Now he's very focused on just what's made him popular. Yeah, what's made him popular, got him these millions of followers and making him his money. But I can't even listen. Anyway, lazy behavior, being assumptive. It keeps you from taking responsibility for your life. You get stuck in the past, and then it's an easy out when you are, and it fosters a negative mindset. You just don't, you're very hostile, and you look for stuff to come to complete your certainty of belief with your assumption. I mean, really seriously. And it's old, painful information that you keep living in when you're assumptive, when you won't move to being presumptive or certainty of belief based on facts and valid information. It's toxic behavior too. Not only does it foster a negative mindset, it's toxic behavior. People that are assumers, that are constantly jumping to conclusions, that have their way of thinking and seeing the world, man, when you're with them, woo, I mean, they will poison everything because they're bitter. Being like this is a negative emotion, and it's a very stressful way of thinking because everything you do is to keep any information out that doesn't prove to you what you're believing is true. And it's even false information. You will go look for information, and like some of the stuff we've got going on now, I'm like, wow. And even some of the broadcasts trying to tell us we didn't see what we saw. It's like, anyway, don't let me get into that. Being assumptive can become a bad habit to break. And that's why I was saying, women, fathers, mothers, when you see your son as being very one note and assumptive in his thinking, break the habit. Make him start asking questions. Ask him questions and then wait for him to answer. I tutor in elementary schools, high risk. Most of my reading students were young Black boys. And one of the big things I can tell you, we don't question them and we don't listen to them. We allow girls to have to be very verbal, to talk and emotional and tell us things about their day. But when a boy is one note or he just says one word, um, rarely will we ask them questions beyond that to get them to open up, to be able to articulate their pain. That is a weakness that has to be taught out of. a boy so that he can become a man who can speak his mind and won't become rationalized and assumptive and one note in his thinking. So it's a bad habit when you see someone who's always assuming. Um, and the more you make assumptions, the more you live like this, the more it's just habitual for you. And I can tell one conversation with someone that we've got to start confronting their assumptions before I can get to certainty of belief for them so they can acquire a new way of thinking that serves them better for their life right now. So it's a bad habit you have to break. Also, being assumptive, the reason why you should avoid it like the plague is it deepens your pain. The more you pick at a sore, the more painful it becomes, and the less likely it'll heal properly. That's assumptions. Once you get in the habit of not wanting more information to confront your certainties of belief, then yeah, it's just. And the final reason why you should avoid assumptions like the plague is, and hear me well, they're 100% wrong. You will find when you get into questioning what you assume that you'll have a perfect record of looking at assumptions and going, now why did I believe that was wrong? That wasn't true. Yeah, they're 100% wrong. So, homework assignment, start looking for your assumptive behaviors. What are you assuming as certain to believe that you haven't questioned, you just assume it's true because mama and them said it, or church said it, or the pope said it, or your pastor said it, or your teacher said it, and you formed that assumption in childhood and you never became presumptive when you started questioning and acquiring information to decide for yourself. You have a righteous mind and a God given right to think. 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 Use your mind to look at both sides of an issue. Listen to someone else's different perspective. Read more than one source of news or information. Watch, which I don't even want to give you advice to watch the news. All of that is very much to make sure it reinforces assumptive thinking. That's what 99% of the news is, and most of it is negative. It just wants you to assume the whole world is on this negative tip, and it very rarely shows you the good stuff. And when it does, it's sprinkled in there so you don't, just fall off a cliff with all the negativity. So that's your homework. Where are you making assumptive beliefs and assuming something is true? And are you willing to question it? And pick one thing. I'm not saying look at your whole thoughts. I'll make it a little nutty to do that. But look at one thing and just see if you can start questioning why you believe that. Is that true? What information do you have to sustain that? Ask questions. These are the questions you can ask. What, who, when, how, and then also talk to someone else. And I love that. That's your homeboy, and that your husband and your daddy or your homeboys. It's great to ask them questions about something you believe to be true and see what they say. So, information was shared that I hope will help you to avoid assumptions like the plague. Now, next week, hopefully I'll have a guest on, and we're going to confront some assumptions about our mental health and our physical health and our internal health. This is a internalist that, or um, a doctor that can help us with what's going on inside. Especially, I'm hoping to get information more about the virus and the flus that are coming, because we're facing flu season, and I'm hoping to get that information to you guys before the holidays, because some of us are going to throw all caution to the wind and go see our families and hang out with family and eat, and hopefully not all get infected with COVID. But this is usually when flu season starts, and we start making each other sick. At least we don't have it in the office anymore. A lot of companies still aren't back in the office. But anyway, I digress. Thank you for joining me today on the Achieve with Dr. C broadcast. I'm Cheryl Carr, your work doctor. I will see you here next Monday, 10 a.m. CST, which I have exciting news. I will be starting, and that is the 25th, the week after next. I will be starting a new consultant gig that I may have to change the time on my show. I don't know. We'll see. But it's really exciting for me. I'm so happy to join this team. So, anyway, thank you for joining me. I'll see you guys next week. Have a blessed rest of your week. Bye.